surprisingly tan. I think it's just the lighting, but I'm ready for summer. Hey everybody, it's Em here to talk about cemeteries, which happen to be one of my favorite places. In particular, I'm talking about the book I just read, Over My Dead Body, Unearthing the... Oh, hang on, I've got to check, make sure I get this right. Unearthing the Hidden History of America's Cemeteries by Greg Melville, which is a book that's coming out in October, but I was fortunate enough to get an advance copy via Netgalley, and I breezed through it. It's my first 5-star read of the year. Obviously, it's kind of a niche market, but it hit my sweet spot, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about my position with the material, because I want to make it clear that I have reasons for loving a book like this that may not be the same for everyone. Sorry, I was forced to evict the cat because he decided to attack the wires, the computer wires, because cat. Anyway, reason number one that I love cemeteries is that my father's family is from southern Louisiana, and cemeteries are a big part of our culture. We live around them. They're very visible to us. They're everywhere because of our need to bury people above ground. In fact, my dad's mom's family was a family of funeral directors. So I don't know, it's just, and I enjoy visiting all the San Luis and the Lafayette and other cemeteries that are lesser known in the towns where my family live. And so they're just a big part of our culture, and I've grown up loving them. Reason number two is that when we lived in a really small town in Texas when I was young, my dad and I would take the telescope to the local cemetery to stargaze because it was the best place to avoid light pollution. Back then, that was no big deal. They didn't stop you from going in at night and stuff like that because it was a small town. Nobody was really going to do anything bad. All the kids were at the Sonic, so it wasn't like that was where kids went to hang out or anything. And I just have grown up with that fascination and love for cemetery monuments, and we lived in Massachusetts for 12 years. Obviously, a lot of really cool old cemeteries like in Salem, and a lot of the places that are mentioned in this book by Melville in Massachusetts and New York are places I've been. Also, Bonaventure in Savannah is a great one. Highgate Cemetery in London is one of my favorites. I admit, for me, one of the worst things about dying and being cremated someday in the future is having to pick a place to bury my cremains. I can only pick one, but maybe my kids will take little vials of my ashes and sprinkle them in other places that I also love, like Highgate and Bonaventure and places like that. Anyway, we'll stop being morbid now and talk about the book, which for me was my first 5-star read of the year. And it's just because it's very easy to read. It's very conversational in tone, but it's tackling some pretty hefty subjects. It's not just a survey of old cemeteries. It really looks at how cemeteries have shaped America and vice versa, how America's values are reflected in the cemeteries and its treatment of the dead. And it's a really, really interesting kind of nexus of information. If you happen to love history and cemeteries, I guess. I honestly, when I was reading this book, was thinking this should be a college course. There should be like some kind of, American history course based on this, because it would be a really interesting way to feed information to students and to have them extrapolate meaning. Because he talks about slave cemeteries versus, white cemeteries, and the way the Native American dead were treated by the American settlers, and the Chinese immigrants, and how, they weren't given some of the same burial rights as others. And also just the changes in the way we have planned and plotted cemeteries. They used to be kind of these wildish places, a little bit haphazard, and then they became, more of the let's mow the lawns off, make all the headstones flat, But in some places they're like very much museum-like. They're statuary, and you can walk through like you would a museum. And some people used to go visit cemeteries for picnics because they were also very beautiful green spaces, and in cities where green spaces are not abundant. Things like that. He looks at Arlington and the way we memorialize our military dead, and just very, very interesting takes on all of these things, and written in a very compelling way, I found. Like I said, conversational, easy to read, just enough humor. Poor Mr. Melville. He reminds me of me because every time we go somewhere, I'm like, let's go look at this cool cemetery that's supposed to be here. And my family's like, oh God, why? Well, no, my daughter actually is all for it, but everybody else is like, we don't want to walk around the cemetery all day. I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be really cool. Actually, my daughter, for her last birthday, asked to go to Colma, which is a city here in California, where there are more dead than living, because it has so many cemeteries. And there's kind of this great cemetery that was actually moved from San Francisco to Colma back in the 1930s. And in fact, Colma is where my husband and I eventually bought a plot for our cremains somewhere in the future. But anyway, that aside, and it's funny because I was reading the book and thinking, well, I hope there's another book with some more different cemeteries in it because I want to read about some other ones. It also was nice that it had some photos, which I was on an e-reader. The photos weren't super crisp, but I could still see them. And I assume they'll just be in black and white in the book too. Hopefully they're a good resolution. But it was nice to have images for what he was describing in some cases. I almost just want a coffee table book. I'm sure there's got to be like photo books of cemeteries, various cemeteries. I don't know. There must be somewhere. Maybe if I get inventive while editing this, I'll throw in some pictures from various cemeteries I have visited in the past. Highgate and Bonaventure come to mind because I think I have probably the most photos from those. But anyway, I gave it 5 stars, but again, I'm super, I don't know if you can hear my son doing his like jumping and clapping in his room. But anyway, I gave it 5 stars because it's super very much my cup of tea, with the understanding that it will not be for everyone. But if you like Ask a Mortician's YouTube channel at all, you probably enjoy this book. There was another, I can't remember now. If I remember, I'll put it somewhere. But yeah, like if you like that kind of thing, if you like history, American history in particular, but he does talk about some of the early cave painting burial sites around the world that have been found. Yeah, it like I said, super quick, breezy read, really interesting takes, points of view on a lot of the stuff, and the way that cemeteries reflect different eras in our like culture and our nation. And it's out in October. I'll probably actually get a copy for my bookshelf because I did really, really like it. I think it's a nice reference. And there you have it. That's my review. Now I'm like, oh, I'm going home in July. Maybe I'll swing by one of the cemeteries while I'm there. Yeah, because out west we're not as, but they're newer. The cemeteries out here are newer, right? They're a little less, I know, they're a little more uniform, a little more of that style. There's fewer like the statuary kind of things going on. So I guess you can you can see the progress of America from East Coast to West Coast in its cemeteries even, can't you? And the book also does discuss like how it used to be what we would call a green burial now, but it was just normal then. You know, you wrap somebody in a shroud, put them in the ground. Then embalming became a thing in the Civil War era. And, and how that changed. And then cremation is far more common now because land is at a premium. It's still not great for the environment though, so now green burials are becoming more and more common. So it's an interesting kind of bell curve of funerary practices, I guess. But anyway, that's it. My May wrap up is not May. May just started. My April wrap up will be coming soon, but I've made separate videos for 3 of the 4 books I read. So what we'll probably talk about are the things I haven't finished, intentionally haven't finished, and things that I haven't finished but hope to finish in May. I got sidetracked with other books instead. So that'll be the April wrap up coming in the next few days probably. In the meantime, take care. I hope you'll check this book out when it's out in October.